Okay, in the previous lecture we took our same photo that we had worked on brightness and contrast and we turned it black and white and then did some adjustments to kind of increase the intensity of the black and white effect. If you didn't go do that on your own, I highly encourage you to do that because again, these skills are going to start to build on each other, and the more familiar you are with these techniques, the faster you're going to learn. For this video, we're going to get a new image and we're going to add a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Okay, so I'm going to hit Control O, Command O on your Mac, and I'm going to open up this image of this girl with a smile, and this is available in the downloads, so I'd encourage you to get that. And the problem with this image is that it's really gray. And we want it to look more like this image, and I'm going to open this one up. This will be the final version of what we're doing. So we want it to look more like this, with a little warmth in her face, okay? So let me close out of these bike images, and let's tile these side by side. So we can just take a quick look, and we're going to go tile 2 up, vertical. Okay, and so see here, she just looks healthy and alive. And over here, it's not horrible, but she just is lacking color, okay? So we're going to click onto this image, and I'll tile these back so we can just work on this one, and then we'll maybe compare them later. So we'll consolidate to tabs, go to the gray one, yep. And we're going to add a hue and saturation layer. Now, I mentioned you can add your adjustments from here last time. But my favorite place to add adjustment layers is right down here. So we're going to go to Hue and Saturation. And again, that adds us a new adjustment layer. And we have our familiar properties box, and we have our familiar sliders. Now this one, instead of having an auto button where you can automatically do the corrections, it has presets. So you can go to this, and there are different types of presets. And most of these are going to be really intense, and they're for really special types of changes. There are a couple like increased saturation, which is going to just increase the intensity of your colors, or you can even go to increase saturation more, and it will do that as well, which is actually pretty darn good. The rest of these get a little funky, but it just depends on what you're looking for, okay? Sepia is kind of like your antique effect, old-fashioned photos, which is cool. But if you want, you can just go back to your defaults, and we'll make sure that we are reset, and we can play with these on our own. So the first one is hue, and you're not actually going to mess with that because what that will do is it will change the overall colors of your entire image. It's going to change the predominant color of your image, okay? So we're just going to double click that and reset it. The main one that we want to use is the saturation. The saturation is just the intensity or the amount of all of the colors in your image. So if we go down this way, if we go all the way down this way, we're just going to make it black and white. So this would be another way to create a black and white image. You have less control than you do with the black and white adjustment layer, but it's possible. And then if you go up this way, you can just go super crazy, disco, lots of color. Okay, but obviously, again, subtlety is the way to go. If this is 0 and we're feeling a little gray, then we want to just bump this up a little bit, and we can even toggle back and forth. Oh, that looks almost exactly the same. Okay, if we go too much, I mean, she has a pretty rosy complexion to begin with, so it's hard to almost go too much, but the name of the game is always subtlety, so we're going to stay here. And you can see when we toggle this off, when you toggle it off, how gray it looks. That brings a lot of life. That just looks a little too gray. Okay, so we'll leave that on. And then finally there's lightness. And again, this one isn't one you'll use as much either, but you can see that it's the same, sort of like brightness and contrast. You can darken it all the way down, and you can brighten it up. Okay, and sometimes you can use this while you're in here, but in general, you're just going to leave that. So that's the basics. There is actually quite a bit more to this that we won't get into because it's just a little too much at this stage in the game. But I will also mention that you have this drop down up here too. And so by default, it's on master. And master means you're working with all the colors at the same time. But you can actually select a specific color and you can work just with that color. So for instance, if we want to go into our reds and we want to play with the saturation or the lightness just of those colors, we can. So we can go into the saturation and increase, and you notice this is just going to increase the reds or decrease the reds. So you can, if you watch her lips right here, you'll notice they go basically to like a blue because they're kind of almost a reddish purple color. But if I go all the way up on the reds, see how significantly it's affecting those. Same with the colors in her scarf and some of her hair and her skin, because there are a lot of reds, so it'll affect that. Anyway, we'll reset that. And then you could also adjust the lightness just of the reds. So when we do this, it really lightens her face. When we do that, it darkens parts of her face. Okay, but that's a way that you can work with specific color channels to have specific effects on your image. But for the purposes of this lecture, what we're really just looking at is changing the saturation, which is what you'll use most of the time, so you can basically correct the color in your image to make it look more natural or more pleasing. Okay? So those are a couple of the most important adjustment layers. This won't be the last time you hear about adjustment layers, but in the next lecture we're going to talk a little bit about how to navigate through your layers to make using them and sorting them and things like that a lot easier. So go download this image from the course, add a hue and saturation adjustment layer, and increase that saturation. Make sure you're clicked on the master and increase that saturation to give some warmth to this subject's face. I'll be looking for that in the Q&As, and I'll see you in the next lecture.